G'day, folks. AoS Coach here, collabing. You'll notice this handsome person to the next to me. I am going to be talking Slaves to Darkness, and I thought I would tap into the Varan Lord himself, Mr. Everchosen, the 17th, coming out of the Mortal Realms. Jordan from Seasons of War is going to help me unpack the Slaves to Darkness faction pack. I'll let him do an intro in a second, though he needs no introduction, this man. We all know who he is. If you don't know who he is, go check out the channel, subscribe. Wonderful battle reports, wonderful thoughts on the game. And, between us, you'll get a lot of really good thinking around Age of Sigmar 4th edition. But Slaves to Darkness, big faction pack, massive faction pack. This will come out very similar time to the faction pack coming out on, I assume, Warhammer Community. So we can't go single war scroll. It will be here till Christmas. So we're going to go through the rules. We're going to go through our favorite units. We're going to show you a bit of a sample of a faction or a couple of army lists, knowing as well that points may change and there might be some erratas. So bear with us. We're doing things in advance. But Jordan, g'day. Welcome back. How you finding 4th edition?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, but 4th edition's been a blast. I think already I've had some of my, most fun games. There's a lot of learning, obviously we all make mistakes, and adjusting to new things takes time, but the game is so fun right now, and I'm having a blast with it.
There's so many times I catch myself out. Actually, I did a video with Skaven with Bruce. So Bruce has been playing with one of my local opponents under the do not talk about things until we're allowed to talk about things. And I recently learnt that the Skaven Narholes, you put them down one at a time. You don't deploy them 3 in one go. But that was the 3rd edition assumption that I just went, oh yeah, you just chuck down 3. Like, well, you can't put them in enemy territory anymore, but you just chuck them down. But nope. So there's so much unlearning and relearning, and it's just building that muscle, catching yourself out.
Yeah, it's really a different game now. Like more is different than is similar.
What have you noticed that you've caught yourself out, or even things that you've learnt that, you had an assumption that, you thought was true and now it's very not true? Or like, what's the learning process been like?
I think one of the biggest things is just magic and manifestations. So the way the Orlando spells work is completely different now. So learning how to interact with them, let alone when to use them and which ones to use, those are all different. And I find has put a heavier reliance on having magic, where I loved, in my lists having like, hey, I'll have one wizard, 1 or 2 casts up, and like at times that just doesn't cut it anymore. So that's been an adjustment for sure. My first game, I had 1 wizard with 1 cast, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is not enough.
It's interesting because I've been playing Stormcast with no wizards, and I'm like, do I really need them? And do I lean into priests? And it's been interesting, right? And speaking of manifestations, I remember the first game I summoned I think it was my Daughters of Cain Blood Snake. And I'm like, cool, summon, go, be free. And I'm like, oh, wait, you don't move anymore. There's no predatory movement in the hero phase. Oh, no, I've got a 9-inch charge.
Yeah, that's a bit of adjustment. Just, charging on the spells in general, that's not a thing we ever did before. Casting outside of 9, and the differences between the ones that do move or don't move is like, okay, which ones can I move within 3 of? Which ones do I have to charge? All those things it definitely takes some getting used to.
So let's like that. There's some really cool things, and you're right. Like, I've had a lot of fun, and the games have been quite close, and been purposely taking double turns to see how punishing it can be. And I don't know about you, but it can be really punishing when you take a double turn if you don't do what you wanted to do, which was cripple your opponent, or things don't go for you. You find like the games are really close, or actually those points would have been the difference.
Yeah. Oh gosh, we could have a 2-hour talk about priority, right? So there's a lot to it.
Yeah, for me, it's been a lot of testing, and Jordan and I have been practicing a lot of different armies, testing a lot of things, not necessarily like just focusing on one list, but really getting a good feel of the game. And we should probably get a good feel of slaves. Let's talk about Slaves to Darkness, our lovely little chaos faction. My gosh, big faction, a lot of war scrolls. Let's take it from the top. How you feeling about the faction?
Overall, good. It was one that just kind of, when I first glanced over everything, it was one that I was kind of instantly drawn to. An army I love, so obviously there's like my 3, 4, 5 favorite armies. Those are the first ones I looked at, and I was like, okay, this feels like there's some good stuff going on here. The sub factions or the battle formations leave a little bit to be desired, maybe, and the enhancements, but that's pretty common around a lot of the factions. And obviously, when battle tomes come down the road, we hope there's a little more depth there. But the faction itself has a lot of great war scrolls. The battle traits are solid. The Eye of the Gods is I think more fun now of how that works, and getting things buffed up and whatnot. So a lot to be excited about, a lot to be happy about, and some really sweet units like that carry over, and some that even got a lot better from 3rd edition.
What's your favorite?
I have to. The first thing I have to say is Abraxia. That is literally when we got access to the information. The first thing I looked up was Abraxia's war scroll, and obviously there was a lot of disappointment. Maybe not a lot of disappointment. There was a lot of trepidation and sadness with her old 4-up save, no ward, and now she's got a 3-up save and a 5-up ward save against everything. So that off the bat was a huge improvement, and actually her war scroll and profiles all got a little bit better, her abilities. So that was the first thing. I love that model. I put a lot of effort into painting it before I knew the rules. So that was the first thing I looked at and was pumped at the improvements there.
It's funny you say that, because when the war scroll went out and everyone was complaining about the 4-up save and no ward, I had to shut up. I'm like, just wait till 4th. I'm in the Facebook comments and in Discord. I'm like, just wait. Because I'd seen the war scroll by then. And I'm like, just wait, chill. I'm sure she's going to get better. She has an interesting we'll talk about this very much through the video, but I thought it was fascinating. I'm like, oh, she stops them from having to strike when the Vanguard do that strike twice, once per game. You in 3rd edition you can do it immediately, while in 4th edition you strike last with the second attack, and then Abraxia comes in and removes that restriction. I'm like, oh, that's a interesting little combination, and I'm glad you're seeing the synergy kind of unfolding there. Any other favorites that are popping up?
The next biggest one I'd say is probably Chaos Knights. We all knew them as like the great tarpet they were when you marked them with Nerdle. But yeah, not only going from 3 wounds to 4 wounds, which is insane for cavalry. Obviously, a lot of cavalry went up to 3, which was very needed in a lot of cases. So them going to 4 was incredible. And now going to 3s to hit rather than 4s just makes them way more reliable. They get, their extra damage on the charge, extra rend on the charge still, so they the rend 2 damage. Still, yes, they are way more reliable than they were before. Still have the potential role of being a tarpet if you want to, but they now even 5-man units are really good, I find, in this edition.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of fighting a 10-man Chaos Knight unit. 40 wounds, super mobile, and it took all of Marathi going in to take out those Chaos Knights, but I'm fearful of the 10. The 5 is bad, the 10 is horrible, so I imagine they're going to be super popular in lists. But we are dancing around a lot of the rules, so we should probably actually get into the rules a little bit and talk about early perception. And again, things might change, folks, bear with us. But we'll go through all of the faction pack and what you need to know, and at least what Jordan, as a experienced Slaves of Darkness player, someone who's played with them already, is kind of feeling and learning along the way. So Let's start battle traits for the folks who are listening and aren't reading. You have two key things here. First is the Eyes of the Gods. The second one is your Marks of Chaos. Your Eye of the Gods is a once per turn, end of any turn. So each friendly Slaves to Darkness unit that has destroyed an enemy unit this turn is a target of the Eyes of the Gods. Friendly beasts and non-hero monsters cannot be targeted to this ability. So we got the Eyes of the Gods has changed a little bit. What happens when we destroy that enemy unit? Make a reward roll for D6 for each target and apply the corresponding effect. You can re-roll the reward for the target, but if you do so, you do take D3 mortal damage if you roll a 1 on the re-roll. And it's worth calling out that the same effect can be applied multiple times to a unit. So you can stack them should your dice be fortunate for you. What can you get? You get a D3 heal. There's a no effect. There's a +1 to hit in combat. There's a 6-up ward that turns into a 5-up ward if you've already got a 6-up ward. +1 rend on melee attacks, or if you roll a 6, it is you get to pick. Mm-hmm. What have you found so far through the Eyes of the Gods?
I think just in general, more reliability. It's a smaller chart, so not as swingy all over the place, but really good from just having the reroll again. Roll 1 or something low or something you don't need, like the heal if you're full health. Just getting to reroll that, even though it is a risk, feels a lot better. You're more likely to get the ones that you're looking for, and we're always situationally. Usually one you were hoping for, one buff or whatnot. And now actually with the way this works, I find like you're getting these pretty commonly. And now, not that you weren't before, but it feels like maybe with just killing units being the thing you have to do to get it, it's happening quite a lot. And then you're again more often getting what you want out of it. So usually for your big combat units that are the ones often killing stuff, it's 3 to 5, 3 to 6 are the real good ones. The heal can be situationally good as well, but +1 rend is amazing. Depending on what you're facing, if you're facing something with minuses to hit, going for the number 3 for +1 to hit helps balance stuff like that out. So you just kind of flavor the taste based on the situation.
If you have the ability to pick the effect, you roll a 6. Are there particular situations or things that have come up where you're like, I'm always going for rend first, or I'm looking for that 6-up ward to turn to a 5-up ward? Like, is there any parts of the decision tree that you'd share from like your experience?
Yeah, again, I think those 3 are all super valid. Probably the +1 hit and the +1 rend are the most common, unless situationally you're like, okay, I just need a little more survivability. But generally, it's the hit and the rend, and that's going to come down to matchup. If you're playing something with high armor, you're going to want the rend. If you're playing something that doesn't have good armor, then you'll want the hit rolls, or something that has negatives. I played a game against Tzeentch, and they still have ways to make you -1 to hit, or even minuses to wound. But here, the +1 hit can help balance those things out, or save you command points, which is an amazing thing in this game as well. So anytime you can save command points is awesome. So both of those are really good.
Yeah, I'm just flicking through some of the War Scroll cards, and I'm seeing a lot of like hitting on 3s or rend -1. So getting it to rend 2 or getting it to 2s and not having to spend a CP, or being able to, I guess, essentially, get 2 +1s where you allocate the all-out attack here and you've got a +1 here. Definitely helps your resource management. So yeah, that's your sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Good. I like it. I mean, it's great. It's easy. It's just something that happens. It's passive. Is just kill a thing and get a thing back.
It's one of the more, I'd say, like from the battle traits in a lot of armies. There's a scale of how relevant or they are throughout the game, or how prevalent they are, or how much you're using them. And these ones definitely, the Eye of the Gods, you're getting quite a bit. Like that's going to be super common that you're making use of that.
Are there any major units that don't benefit? Obviously, beasts and non-hero monsters. So what's that? Things like soul grinders, things like furies, things like what else? Non-hero.
Yeah, Raptorix.
So
I
like,
think actually furies aren't beasts; they're infantry.
oh,
So,
Oh,
yeah. So they if they can kill a unit, they would benefit, but that's the killing the unit's the hard part.
look, if a Fury kills a unit, they deserve to get the Eyes of the Gods.
Yeah.
I'm just having a look through the cards. Oh, the Raptorix,
Yeah.
the weird bird thing.
Yes.
That's definitely a beast. So again, if you kill
Yeah.
something, it's not going to be getting Eyes of the
Mhm.
Gods.
I don't think there's any units like limited by the beast and non-hero monsters that you're really worried about, because most of the monsters are that you know commonly are running now. You saw the odd soul grinder or things like that last edition, or my buddy Ryan would have the Mutant Vortex Beast, and like those are very rare, so it would affect those, but generally those aren't super commonly ran units.
No, definitely not. Although we haven't seen the pitch battle profile, maybe Soul
Sure.
Grinder meta is here. Maybe it's coming with a big pie plate to sit on objectives. Maybe. No, not really. The Mark of Chaos is your other ability. Again, it's a passive ability. It just happens. And friendly Slaves to Darkness units will have one of the following effects. So you will mark your units as per normal. You have the Undivided, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Shout out to Tzeentch. It's actually a useful one, finally. I was never a fan of the 3rd edition Tzeentch mark. I now feel it's definitely not top tier, but it's definitely a little bit more usable. The rules, if you're not again, you're not reading, Undivided is +1 to wound rolls for units combat attacks that target a hero or monster. Khorne is going to add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons if they charged in the turn. Tzeentch is a 4+ ward against mortal damage inflicted by spells and manifestations. Nurgle is subtract 1 from wound rolls for combat attacks that target the unit. And then Slaanesh is add 1 to run and charge rolls. So a lot in common with the 3rd edition book. How do we rank them?
Very similar to last edition. I think the two standouts are Khorne and Nurgle. +1 attack on the charge, obviously strong. If you have something that you want to be a little more survivable and take a hit, then you go Nurgle, and it's -1 to wound. It feels like a lot more combat, a lot more engagements in this edition. Armies have to be closer, ranges are shorter, all those kind of things. So there's a lot of action, and the ones that help you survive combats or kill the enemy unit in combat obviously are very strong. I think, like you said, Tzeentch is definitely better than it was. Mortal wound damage overall has come down, and so that one's maybe a little more situational and matchup dependent on if you're getting value there. The Undivided, same thing. It could be really good in some matchups, or it could not do much for you. So that's kind of both of those I find are a little riskier to take. So then those are probably the lower two, with Khorne and Nurgle the highest two, and Slaanesh right in the middle. I'd say +1 to run and charge rolls is good. Is it as good as the other ones or as impactful? Maybe in some situations, if you roll an 8 and you need a 9-inch charge, then it's super impactful. But game to game, it's probably not as strong.
No, you're 100% right. That ability would have definitely helped me twice when I countercharged a failed 5-inch countercharge, and I needed that +1. Yep. But it's super situational where +1 attacks is just always good. It does require you to charge though, so being countercharged, you'd have to really either hit your charges and avoid being countercharged if you're trying to create like a bit of a wave. But yeah, like Nurgle is going to be super tanky and Khorne is going to be super slappy.
Mm-hmm.
They just, and like, again, chuck it on Varangard, chuck it on Chosen, chuck it on Warriors, chuck it on, like, it's...
Knights.
Yeah. And we'll show you some lists around how Jordan's actually putting some marks on. But have you found any synergies with the marks that we hadn't kind of tapped into in 3rd edition? Because again, people knew about those traditional ones, Knights, Chosen, Warriors.
Yeah, I haven't really done anything too creative outside of Khorne and Nurgle for the most part. I've total Slaanesh here and there for the countercharge and stuff like that, because there is a world in which a big part of the game being denying tactics now, or and that's especially a big game in fourth, or a big part of the game in fourth edition. But being able to countercharge with +1, as you said, is big with Slaanesh. And with a potential 3d6 charge if you do a magical intervention to get that spell off for demonic speed, then you could, you're averaging 13 inches on your charge roll, or 13 and a half. So that's pretty spicy. To be able to deny tactics could really come up.
Yeah, and denying tactics is important because, as you might already be aware, they are now worth 4 victory points out of a traditional 10 that you have to score in a battle round. So denying someone a battle tactic can be huge, or as we mentioned, the double turn taking it can be quite impactful because that's a lot of points potentially. So we now have our sub-factions, which are now called battle formations, and there are 4 options for us to choose from. We have the Legions of Chaos, the Godswrath Warband, we have the Spoilers, and we have the Darkoath Hordes. So the Legion of Chaos. So while there is, do I read these all out? Is this story time with Coach? Maybe we all read these now, or you go to the PDF. But Jordan, how do these rank? What do we like? Any standouts when it comes to battle formations?
I wouldn't say there's any standouts because I don't think any of them are super impactful. I think the most generic one is maybe the Godswrath Warband, so the second one here, where on each of your turns you get to choose an objective you control and contest, just contest, not even control. And you mark it for the rest of the game. You defile it, so that's 5 throughout the game. And at the end of each of your turns, you roll, and on a 2-up on a D3, enemy units take that many mortals if they're, you roll for each unit on defiled objectives. So I did that in my first game, and I think I did a total of 2-3 mortal wounds with it throughout the game. So it wasn't super impactful. It has the potential to be in some situations, some matchups and whatnot. Like, that was a 6 objective mission. If you're playing one with only 3 and you have all 3 objectives defiled on round 3, that's more impactful if your enemy's then taking, potentially 2d3 mortals over the rest of the game to each unit contesting an objective. But and combined with something like the Nexus Chaotica, which can maybe pile on a couple more mortals. So that's my thought of that's kind of the most generically solid one. Darkoath Horde is solid from a recursion standpoint, giving the chance to bring units back, and even having 2 or 3 models coming back from a unit of like the Fell Riders or even 5 Marauders. Those units can be super impactful for scoring or grabbing objectives that aren't guarded, and things like that. So that one has a lot of value if you're running any Darkoath, which are great as screens and against scoring units or chaff, but it does have the tax of having to have a Darkoath hero as well. So
to go back to a comment you said very early at the top of the discussion, the battle formations really feel super unimpactful. Like they're not cooked like they used to be. I know when I've been playing with my Stormcast, for example, like they're just average. Like, they're okay, but it's not like the old 3rd edition where it's like there's this amazing sub-faction. I'm going to build around it, and it's going to unlock this crazy value in my units, or it unlocks a whole bunch of units for being battle line and all this crazy stuff. They're really nice to have, but I wouldn't say that a lot of these are super impactful. They're nice.
My preference with battle formations is I don't want to be railroaded into like certain units or a certain build or something, and that's where the Godswrath Warband I think is generically the probably the most reliably most likely to be effective one or impactful. Darkoath Horde again, not bad. Sucks to be forced to take a Darkoath hero to use it, and then the other 2 you're like forced a lot more. There's the Demon Prince one, so and those ones it's like okay, just feels very situational. Legion of Chaos, that one sounds decent, like adding to control score. Well, you have what is it, a Warriors of Chaos hero and a Demon hero, which again you kind of have to build around. Is that potentially something you're already doing in your list? Yeah, it is. And 2 to the OC, okay, that's solid. So I think that's one you could easily see and go as well and not feel bad about it if you already are taking those kind of units. But I also can't say with the changes to OC or the inclusion of objective control, I haven't really found any games very often, like really many instances where it's like, oh, if I had an OC buff or the OC negatives were really impactful in any games. So I don't know if that's really a game trying to boost or negate OC is really going to be a game that people are playing very often. Almost like where we had the bravery tricks in 3rd edition to like plus and minus bravery. Did anyone really care about that? Not a ton. OC is probably not as irrelevant as that felt. So I wouldn't ignore it, but you're often, again, less units on the table as well. You're often killing something or outnumbering someone if you're planning to take it already. So that's been my experience, at least.
I will say that it has come up a few times in my games where I've played, again, Stormcast versus Skaven has been my latest examples, where Skaven does have a heap of units on the board and my Stormcast is super elite. So my Liberators on a home objective get +3 to the control score. I've got a Knight Vexillor with a little banner who can give +3 to the control score. And it's helped me keep or retain an objective over a horde. Nice. But when you're going against elite versus elite, it's just who suffers the most damage or, is able to save the best.
Yeah. Or I think of like here, you put Vanguard or Chosen into something, or even Chaos Knights or Chaos Warriors now are very solid. They're gonna kill enough clan rats, right? Most cases. Now I can see, again, situationally, you're missing one model and +2 to control storm makes the difference. That'll come up once in a while. Is it going to, be super impactful in all your games? Probably not. But again, none of the battle formations really feel like they are.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think the difference between my Stormcast example and this example is Stormcast is on a home objective. Mm-hmm. So for someone who deep strikes into my backfield and I'm trying to protect that home objective, I'm fine. It gives me a bit more defense. While this one is an offensive buff and it's not as impactful. But I know a lot of the slaves lists that I've been building, I've got a demon prince in there, so that would tick the demon hero. But I've noticed that I'm taking a lot less heroes in my lists because I want to reduce the amount of regiments I have. So unless there's like a special regiment that allows you to have another hero in the regiment, I'm trying to keep that to a minimum.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Often like 2 or 3 kind of seems to be what most of my lists have.
I've done a 4, but otherwise, it's trying to reduce it as much as possible. 3 is the sweet spot I'm finding. Speaking of sweet spots, we have 3 artifacts. And you're going to find this is common across all of the books. So you'll have 3 artifacts, 3 spells. Some, like Tzeentch, will have a second set of 3 spells, but for most part, the options are pretty limited. So your heroic trait, is either your favorite of the Pantheon. So in the deployment phase, you can use either the God's Table in the deployment phase as if you had destroyed a unit, which is a nice little start potentially. You have Radiance of the Dark God, so in any hero phase, pick each damaged friendly unit wholly within 12 to be the target. Roll a dice on a 3-up, it heals 1, or if it's a monster, it heals 3. And then you got the Deathmonger, which is a once per battle in any combat phase. This unit can use 2 fight abilities. However, the second time you use it, it's strike last. What do we like?
I think Deathmonger is probably the first one you're attracted to. Fight twice being such a good ability, but actually probably the one I've used the most in lists is Radiance of Dark Glory, because I've often found I don't have like a unique or non-unique combat hero in my lists. Now you can take one for sure, and that's where Deathmonger stands out. Okay, Fight Twice is awesome. Favorite of the Pantheon, it's like that. It seems like it's for a combat hero too. You want to give them +1 hit or +1 rend or something. So it's are either those buffs as good as being able to fight twice once per game? Debatable, but unless it's a hero you expect a ton out of throughout the full 5 rounds of the game, I'd say you're probably getting more value out of Deathmonger. But then because again I've ran Abraxia, I've ran Be'lakor, and then alongside them they have a Sorcerer Lord or something like that. That's where I end up taking Radiance of Dark Glory for the heal, and it's not super impactful, but it's not nothing. And it actually did come up big, against armies that have debuffs that you can remove with healing, like Tzeentch did. That could help with things like that too. And obviously, just extra resiliency never hurts.
Yeah, like for me, the last place is clearly favored of the Pantheon. If I roll that one, or if I roll like this, there's opportunities to feel bad, and I don't like the fact that like if I could choose one of the abilities, maybe I'd like it a little more, but I don't want to. I don't want to roll a crappy like a heal, like I roll a 2, like
Yes.
whoop-de-doo,
Yeah.
and then I roll a 1 and I take some damage. You're probably right. Like when I look at this, I play around with the Radiance of the Dark Glory because I have that Demon Prince, right? So it can be sitting behind the Knights and the Vanguard, supporting with the heal. Equally, to your point, Deathmonger, a lot of your heroes are unique, right? Whether it's Eternus, whether it is Be'lakor, Archaon, Abraxia. So you can't give it to them. But I guess if you're running the Kakadrak or the
Demonic Steed.
yeah,
those guys are good too. So it's definitely possible to have them in your lists. But again, like you've said, being lower on heroes, they just haven't quite made the cut for me yet.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Radiance of the Dark Glory is the one that stands out for me as number one. But if you've got that customizable hero, yeah, Deathmonger also works.
Yep.
Artifacts of Power. This is the ones that I like. Let's start cooking with artifacts. And by the way, just to remind you, hero Trek don't have to go into generals anymore. They can go into any hero, just obviously not uniques. Mm-hmm. You've got Infernal Puppet, which is once per battle, start of any turn. Pick a visible enemy wizard within 24. For the rest of the turn, each time that target is picked to use a spell ability, deal D3 mortal damage to the target as a reaction. If the target's destroyed, obviously you don't keep going, rolling the D3. You have the Realm Warp's Twist Rune, once per battle, hero phase. Pick a terrain feature within 12 inches to be the target. If the target does not have obscuring terrain, it gains it until the start of your next turn. Then roll a dice for each model, friend, and enemy within 1 inch. On a 5-up, it takes a mortal damage. And then you have the Conqueror's Crowns, where you subtract 5 from the control score of friendly infantry units while they're within combat with this unit.
So here, I think for the reasons stated before of not generally having a combat hero, I have a wizard who's going to get this artifact. I've gone for Infernal Puppet. It's also, I think there's a lot of 2-cast wizards I think going to be in lists now, across different armies, because again, the more spells, the better. And being able to put this on something like that and said, okay, do I not cast now? Because I'm potentially taking 6 mortal wounds if I get my 2 spells off, or just being able to mess with people that way. And worst case scenario, you do that and they choose not to cast. That's effective use out of that artifact as well.
Yeah, I imagine a world where, and I have this hypothesis, and maybe you agree or disagree, that in the early stages, the first couple of months of 4th edition, we're going to see a lot of Kronspines. I think the fact that this is a free endless spell, people are just going to run to it. May not be the right choice, but I think that people are going to run to it. Being able to snipe that wizard that summons the Kronspine and automatically basically remove it with something like Infernal Puppet could be a difference maker.
Yeah, it's super. So again, not a super aggressive artifact by any means. That's going to be if your hero that it's going on is a wizard, that's probably the most effective one. Realm Warper's Twist Rune is cute in the certain situations. You can make obscuring terrain for you to hide behind, but you might hurt yourself with it if you're too close. Only lasts 1 turn. So if you really need to block line of sight, or you're playing where you're really trying to delay the game, or whatever, I guess the case for that, but I wouldn't feel like that's a very good one. Obviously, Slaves feels like it's generally a more aggressive army. So that's probably the one you'll see the least. But the Conqueror's Crown, then again, situationally really good. If you're on, if you have a hero that, again, Demonic Steed or a Chaos Lord on Cartridge Rack could be really good on them. Also lets them go into like enemy objectives by themselves and potentially take it away from a unit of, 10 battle line if they can kill a couple and then reduce their OC. Like that's more relevant there on a combat hero, but again, you wouldn't put that on a sorcerer or anything. So that's kind of the thing. If you have the hero, if you have the wizard hero that's going on, you're going Infernal Puppet. If you have a combat hero it's going on, you're going Conqueror's Crown.
Yeah, that's again where the Demon Prince comes in for me. It's like, because he's a control score of 5, you're reducing control score by the Conqueror's Crown. You're taking objectives, and it's not too bad. 3 up save, 6 attacks, damage 3. He slaps, or she. Demon Prince can slap. Spell lore. We got some interesting spells. Shout out to the Kabbalist. Poor old Kabbalist. There's no Kabbalist anymore, so there's no crazy good 3d6 casts, unfortunately, for you.
Yeah, well, I think be too strong to have that in this edition. But yeah.
Maybe the battle tome. There's some really good spells. And just to remind you, you don't have to pick spells anymore. So you don't pick an individual spell for every wizard. You just pick a lore, and this is the one and only spell lore you've got access to currently. Not that we know if there's any more coming, but this is what you got. What you've got is you've got Spike Tongue Curse, you've got Binding Damnation, and Demonic Speed. So the Spike Tongue Curse is a casting value 5. The other 2 are casting value 7. Spike Tongue Curse is unlimited as well, so you can cast it across multiple wizards. What do you like?
Not Spike Tongue Curse. It's too risky. So it's D3 mortal, it's 3 mortal wounds at 12-inch range, but at the risk of taking D3 mortal wounds. It's low casting value, and you're only to use it, I feel like, if you're desperate, because it's just, or if the enemy doesn't have casters, and you can get +1 from your terrain piece. So, but like, if you miscast and you cast that spell, you're taking 2d3 mortal wounds. That alone, like, you're potentially risking killing your own wizard. And we know from 3rd edition how bad that feels when that happens. And it's unfortunate that's their unlimited spell, because I honestly haven't cast it once. Not that could be situationally what you need for those 3 mortal wounds to make or break a game would be awesome, but so it's nice to have in the back pocket. But the ones you're going to be really looking at from the spell lore are Binding Damnation and Demonic Speed, which are both amazing spells. Binding Damnation is a strikes last on your opponent's unit, and that's until the start of your next turn. So potentially your turn, and with a double even, potentially your opponent's 1 to 2 turns. That's huge. And then also a great shout out for Magical Intervention, of being able to do that on your opponent's turn if they're going to try and come in. Really, really scary to potentially have to deal with. And then Demonic Speed is a 3d6 charge. So you get extra dice when you're making a charge roll. And the great call out here, big blow out for this spell, is that it's no longer restricted to cavalry or mounted units like it was in 3rd edition. So your Chosen, your Chaos Warriors, they'll be able to benefit from this as well, which is amazing, because it helps, the limitation to those units was often mobility, so this actually does help kind of balance that out.
Any particular units you really like? Like, there's a lot of things, you could put it on a chariot. You could just chuck the chariot up and go pin something early. Like, there's so much utilization with Demonic Speed.
Yeah, everything, right? Like, everything benefits from being faster. Everything benefits from getting to hit before your opponent gets to hit, so both those spells are really good. Demonic Speed, I've cast it on everything from, Chaos Knights to Abraxia, Varangard, Chosen. They all benefit from it too. It's basically the units that you want to get into the action and be able to, put it on any of them. Having access to it with Bellator's 2 casts, Archaon's casts, like those are really impactful spells if you can get them off.
Yeah, for me, it's something like Chosen who really benefit, because obviously
Yes.
Varangard and Knights are already fast. But when you chuck it on a Chosen who are traditionally a lot slower, and you now have that 3d6 charge threat, if you want to double down and put Mark of Slanesh on them, to make them a little faster, or you just go a little slappier, Chosen really benefit. Obviously, turn 1 threat of Varangard or Knights in your face is a nightmare. That'll kill people. I will call out one thing though. There might be some synergy between the Spite Tongue Curse and Infernal Puppet. So depending on how the meta settles, if people, because they're trying to reduce the amount of regiments, go maybe 1 wizard, there might be some little wizard sniping abilities if you combine the two, and if you're willing to throw away like a sorcerer to kind of just snipe these wizards. Just a thought.
Yep. And that's what I said. It could be really impactful at times. Like if you are willing to risk the D3 mortal wounds, like doing 3 flat mortal wounds to something, like could force your enemy, be the difference of like, hey, they're going to charge in this big hero or big unit, but now they can't because they're potentially going to die on the hit back or something, right? So
yeah, if you can activate like a place of power, and there's ways to I guess reduce the risk, but there's some interesting stuff there. But what I find really interesting is your manifestation lore. My gosh, there's some good stuff in here. So that we can choose a bunch of manifestations. There are 6 universal, Kronspine, primal energies, there's all these Twilight sorceries. So you can pick those, or you can pick your Slaves to Darkness ones, and there are 3 in here. So again, this is not story time. Read it in your PDF. We'll be here forever. But what have you found from playing with manifestations? Are there ones that hit the table more often? Are there things that you're really utilizing because some of them now have movement or health characteristics or abilities that really stand out for you?
yeah, I think in general, their lore is good. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but they have 2 solid ones in the Darkfire Demon Rift and the Realm Scourge Rupture, and you basically just think of these as like free chaff units that can do a bit of damage, right? So gives you a little shooting with the Demon Rift. The Realm Scourge Rupture has some decent potential combat, but also does mortal wounds. So they're good. Again, you can use them to harass the enemy units, block stuff up. And that's so the nice bonus in that way. The Eightfold Doom Sigil has like the biggest potential impact, but it's just so situational. It can give you +1 attack, to stuff wholly within 12, but only if 2 units have already died that phase, which is just so tough to engineer, especially when we don't have like high magic output, we don't have high shooting output. So to kill 2 units before combat is really tough, and then you don't want to wait. If you have a big impactful combat where you want +1 attack, that's usually the combat you have to go with first, with a big unit going into another opponent's big unit, and they really want to clap it. If you're trying to wait and get that buff, you're going to take wounds, take casualties. It's not worth the payoff. So that is like, it's just too situational to be able to make good use out of. If it was 1 unit, maybe it's a little better, but 2, I think even 1 would be tough to engineer, I think. So two is very difficult.
Yeah, it really is. Like on paper, when you read it, you're like, yeah, this is possible. +1 attack. I this is the sequence that I run. But actually, when you think about 2 units dying and the way that we're constructing lists, there's definitely a lot more, what I'm seeing, a lot more elite units and a lot more durable tanky units. Can I kill 2 units, friend or foe? And then, as you said, reap the rewards of a +1 attack to that critical unit.
Yeah.
It's good in theory. I don't know how well it manifests on the table to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dark. I really like the Darkfire Demon Wraith. It does have a really potent shooting and melee damage potentially. Some potential high spikes. But the interesting thing with that Darkfire is that it takes some damage if you do a shooting attack. Yeah. Does it take damage? No.
No. So
what is it?
it can build up ruinous power points or ruinous energy points, and it gets, I think it's an extra shot for each point on it for that spells cast near it.
Yeah, I can't remember. No, I was looking at something else. Before the stream started, I was looking at something else. I'm like, oh, I was connecting it in the... No.
It improves its shooting attacks, like, D6 is random, but if you're at D6 plus 6, that could be a lot of shooting attacks. And these kind of units are just like, they're not amazing, a lot of the endless spells, but they're annoying. And you have to deal with them. So, because if you don't, over the course of 3 turns, the Darkfire Demon Wraith could kill, 2 chaff units that you're using, right? So you need to deal with them, and then that's why they're good, because then it stops you from dealing with the rest of the army, right?
Yeah, they do plenty of times. And it's only 6 health, only a 6-up save, for example, with the Demon Rift. But to your point, that's shooting attacks that I need to allocate to the Demon Rift, not to the unit, which works in your favor. They do become annoying.
Yeah.
So...
And even for zoning out deep strikes, they're really good. Clogging up, charge lanes or movement lanes. All the normal endless spell uses that we were used to.
Yeah, that'd be good. They're good value.
Even more now that they actually have those bubbles that you can't be near them.
Maybe one more question about the manifestations. Why are you choosing this over some of the other ones, like the universal ones? Is there anything that really stands out for you?
So I put this in my list today just as a generic to make sure we talked about them. But there's definitely arguments for some of the other ones. There was, I think, probably 3 standout lores in there. Honestly, 4 of the generic ones, even if you include the incarnate, which situationally I think is a good play too. But some of them, there's so many good endless spells, and a lot of them have 2 or even 3 good endless spells in there that you'll potentially be getting use out of each game. And we could go, like, obviously there's lots to talk about with all the different patches there, but that's where some of those ones actually will often be chosen, I think, over the generic ones, not only for slaves, but a lot of the generic manifestation patch for armies, I find, which is maybe a good thing for balance wise. There's like the generic ones seem to maybe be a little bit stronger on average, or maybe not stronger, but have more, be more likely to have good uses throughout the game.
Yeah, being able to tap into some of the teleport shenanigans from Soulscream Bridge or from Longchen, or there are some of the things like the Gnashing Jaws that might be able to support and follow your Knights and your Vanguard. There's some other interesting universal stuff that you can tap into.
Yeah. What is it? Not Life Spring, but the healing one, bring back 3 wounds to stuff. Purple Sun now only affecting enemy units. Like there's lots of good ones out there.
Okay. I mean, there's good things to explore. There's definitely some good things in here. I tend to agree with you. I think some of the faction manifestations aren't as good as the universals, and these are cool. I guess it depends on what you're building around and what synergizes the best, but some interesting stuff. Next up, we have our terrain feature, the Nexus Chaotica. So for most people, they probably haven't even hit the table yet. They got the rules in the Dawnbringers series, and maybe they've played with it a few times. It's that wonderful little piece. Before I ask you this question, which little icon did you put on your Nexus? I put Slaanesh, being a Slaanesh boy.
Was there an undivided one?
There is. Yeah, there's an undivided one.
I probably did the most generic looking one. Just so so I'm not tied to anything.
I thought that, but to be fair, like I was gonna play slaves at a tournament. I don't have the time to paint it for an August tournament, but I was gonna use a painted Slaanesh list, but using corn marks because they're just so much better.
Oh.
I can't not do it. Like they're so much better.
Yeah.
But your Nexus, right? Okay, so it comes with cover and impassable. There's no move characteristic. It's got a 4-up save, 12 health. The terrain rules, how you deploy it, is pretty consistent now across the board. A couple of rules you're going to get. One, you have drawn power. So roll a dice, give a number of power points to the terrain feature equal to the roll. The terrain feature can have a maximum of 12 power points. Infernal Sorcery is if this terrain feature has 3 or more power points, pick a friendly Slaves to Darkness wizard within 3 inches, remove 3 power points and add +1 to casting for that turn. Or if the terrain feature has 9 or more power points, you pick an objective or a terrain feature, then pick a number of enemies within 3 inches of that source of the target, remove the 9 power dice, roll a d3 on a 2-up, inflict a number of mortal wounds equal to the roll. So, bunch of power points, 2 uses.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think this is the same as it was basically in AoS 3, besides having a save and health characteristic. And it's not game breaking as a lot of the AoS 4 stuff has been tempered. So it's a nice to have that little bonus. I think maybe if you roll high turn 1, if you roll a 5 or 6, you maybe hang on to the points to try and corrupt the realms on turn 2 or 3 and get those mortals out there, especially in combination with some of the other sources of mortal wounds on objectives like we talked about. Those are options, but worst case scenario, like you roll low, +1 to cast doesn't hurt. So I think the biggest thing actually for me, it was like try to find a spot to put this. Maybe we play with maybe denser tables on it than the average event, but it's a big terrain piece, so it can get in your own way in your deployment. So just something to be aware of.
How do you use it? Do you put it defensively, and do you have like a babysitter that sits on the terrain feature? How are you using it?
I've typically kind of just put it, back center of my army, kind of behind my stuff, or in the middle, somewhere where if my wizards are going, side to side on the table, they can probably stay within 3 inches because it's pretty big. If they're towards the back of the board to be outside of unbind range at the start, they can move up, 10 inches and still be within 3 inches of the front. So try to put in like kind of that relevant casting window for the wizards. But again, you got to balance the making sure it's not in your own way if you need to reposition, which it definitely can be.
Yeah, it is a big boy. Interesting. It's an interesting set of rules. I really do like, obviously, Corrupt the Realms for obvious reasons.
It was gotta shout out, it is one of the coolest looking terrain pieces, though. I think it is awesome.
Yeah, one of my friends, actually one of the people who supplied one of the images for the endless spell, the manifestations, I noticed an LED under the little the little grate thing. Yeah. I'm like, this is a good idea. I like it.
Yeah.
So shout out, Craig. I really like what you're doing with your Nexus. Let's talk War Scrolls. And look, again, I'm assuming you all have the PDF around or accessible at some particular point. But what are our favorite War Scrolls? Actually, let's start from the top. Before I get to your favorites, let's talk about a couple of the big boys. First one, we have Archaon himself, Lord of the Everchosen. Some really interesting rules when you look at Archaon, right? Still a beat stick, does, some really big damage. Shout out to Dogar's head, who does flat 5 damage. Still has the Eye of Ed Sheeran that will dictate the priority roll, essentially, although it won't stop your opponent from scoring a battle tactic if you force them to take the prio, or like if you're forced to take it, like that's not going to change things. What else? I mean, there's some, you can tap into some of the Khorne, Zeech, Nurgle marks, despite being undivided. Slayer of Kings still exists. You've got a Rampage based off the heads of Dogar. Thoughts on Archaon?
Similar to before, excuse me. I think, again, a big unit. So whenever you have a big body like that, it's always limiting to the rest of your army, and maybe more so this edition, because armies feel smaller than they did. So that's notable that, okay, it's tough to fit that in. But again, being 2-cast, all the other things we've talked about, he's got some great stuff. Brings a lot to the army, and he's can really be a big bully out there, especially when you think he has access to 3d6 charge spell and Fight's Last spell. And I think the IFG Union is subtly, obviously we all know that ability of it determines the turn order, but I think it actually is stronger this edition because of the potential chance for it to allow you, like you said, to take a double turn without barring an FAQ or that changing. It's the players don't have a choice, so they're not electing to take a double turn, so they don't suffer the penalty of taking a double turn, whether it's your opponent being forced to take a double or you. So that can be really interesting if you're on the bottom of the round, and it could let you potentially take a double without again being penalized. Could be really, really big.
Yeah, and I think the amount of mortal damage and even high rend seems to be reduced a little bit. The crazy amounts of rend and mortals doesn't exist as much. So having 25 wounds in a hero that has a 5-up ward, and you have the new access to rally and the way rally works now,
so big.
This thing is really hard to kill. The Archaon is going to take a lot of effort to bring down. But to your point, it's probably going to cost you up to 50% of your army list. Like, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
Any other comments about Archaon?
No, just that. All those things, right? Big body. He's going to be able to bully stuff. He's going to be way harder to deal with. Healing, the rally combined. Maybe you have a little wizard that can heal 3 to monsters from that command trait or artifact, and life swarm, potentially healing 9 wounds a turn if you're out of combat, like 9 to 12 it's pretty wild.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can build around Archaon, but it's only one model, so
exactly.
How you scoring your battle tactics and your objective control with the rest of the points is up to you. Let's talk about the Spear of the Everchosen, Abraxia. So again, some interesting rules. We mentioned a little earlier that she's able to, where was it? So when Varangard use their Relentless Killer's ability, which is the fight twice once per game, you remove the strike last. That's a 4th edition rule on Varangard. She has some, 3-up save, 14 health, move of 10, a bit of an anti-hero with +1 rend, bringing that primary weapon up to rend 3 damage 2. A lot of interesting abilities. As someone who's going to show us a list in a second with Varangard, what are your thoughts on Abraxia?
She's great. It used to, you looked at her ability and the synergy that she had in 3rd edition, and it was just like, why do I really want her in my list? Here she has good value. She's really, really good at taking down enemy heroes. With it going to rend 3, 3 damage on the charge, potentially 4 damage if you can roll a 3-up, which is pretty likely. So she has good value there, and the mount is solid as well. And also, she has an ability to do -1, a rampage for -1 attack to an enemy hero in combat, which -1 attack is one of the best buffs out there for limiting an opponent's output. So those are all good. I think the Vanguard synergy is nice. Like it's cool, and it definitely will help at times. Do you have to run Vanguard if you take her? I don't think it's so critical. Like that buff probably isn't the reason you're taking her. She's 14 wounds with a 3-up save and a 5-up ward, so really tiny body. She can go out and play by herself on objectives, and you'll be out on her own unsupported, and you're not potentially worried about her going down. So that's if you're going to take Abraxia, that's kind of the main reason. If you're also taking Varangard, there's the added synergy, which can be very solid for sure.
I was going to ask you the flip side. Like, if you were taking Varangard, given there's no, is it Knights of the Everchosen, where you could make one of them a general unit now? No, that no longer exists.
Yeah.
Does a Varangard heavy list have to take Abraxia? And I don't think it's an auto include, but certainly will bloody synergize nicely.
Yeah, I don't think it has to by any means. There, it's just a nice little crossover. Vanguard, like, yeah, it's a nice bonus for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's like it can really put your opponent in binds, but you're not forced to use one or the other. And there's actually some other like synergies with other heroes that effectively do the same thing. For instance, we already know we have the Fight's Last spell. We've talked about that. That effectively does the same thing for Vanguard that Abraxia does. It lets you activate potentially twice before your opponent, and actually the Fight's Last spell does it better because it's just then choosing them in the normal activation order, so your opponent has a chance to go. So you don't necessarily need Abraxia to effectively get good use out of that. And even if you do have Abraxia and you have Vanguard in range that are using the ability at the right time, which is can be tough to engineer, your opponent potentially is still going to choose to fight before them anyways. Now, if there's multiple activations, that's where it can get a lot more interesting. Of like, your opponent can't just be like, "Oh, you fought over here, so I'm gonna go over here." He now might have to go into those Vanguard, and it lets you protect a different unit, and provide issues or challenges for your opponent to deal with in that way.
Could be nice with like a 1-2 punch with Varangard and Knights, or if you're charging like multiple things and you just really want to hit them hard early on. But yes, like, do you have to have Abraxia? No, it's definitely not an auto include.
Yeah.
What about Be'lakor? The Dark Master himself.
Yeah, talking about auto includes, he I wouldn't say auto include. It's still early in edition. There's lots for us to explore, but he is very good. My first list, obviously, I had to run Abraxia, but I'm like, I want to run Be'lakor. He's so good, and you just can't fit them both in a list with anything else of note, really. But Be'lakor, yes, he was good before, and people always took him, whether it was in slaves or other armies, and he's only gotten better. Better output, more reliability. Still has the 14 wounds on a 4-up, ignoring rend. Now, the Rampage is probably the biggest thing people are talking about or should be excited for, and that's on a 4-up. He can give strike first to slaves units within 3 inches, so within combat range.
Up to two friendly Slaves to Darkness units. So
which can also be himself. So it's always a risk. Be'lakor is always a tough piece to deal with, and now when you do go into him, if you're trying to, he's potentially fighting before you. And if there's something else there too, they potentially are too. So you think of like a low objective mission, and you've got some, Chosen or something, with him, and he's behind them. Your position between two objectives. How do you go take either of those objectives if you're potentially getting countercharged by something that's also striking first? Maybe you're Chosen out corn marked, and then they're also getting an extra attack on the charge.
I was just reading the War Scroll spell in Feeble Foe. You pick a unit within 18 inches, which is very generous. Yep. Casting value of 6, and then you get to subtract 1 from hit rolls for the target combat. Okay, but it's that second one. The target's combat attacks cannot score crit hits. So you can go into something that can hit you back hard, and know that if you can deny the crit hits, you can really...
That some armies or some units really rely on those, right? So yeah, like I think obviously it's in a mirror match. A unit like Chosen in a different army that really wants the crit mortals or those kind of things. There's a lot of units that do that. So being able to turn off that ability is awesome.
Yeah, and that would be definitely how you would try to handle Be'lakor, who ignores positive and negative modifiers, right? Like go in for something with crits. Well, you can't. So good little spell. You like him, strong, not necessarily an auto include, but I imagine it'll be popular.
Yeah, also 2-cast wizard. He only has a 6 of ward, which would have been nice for him to have a 5, like some of the other like kind of greater demon stuff. But then also worth noting that his Dark Master ability to like lock down an enemy unit is better than it was before. Um, I think in a way overall, because it's no longer like at the start of the round or the start of each phase are you rolling and it affects the whole phase. Um, but now you're rolling per ability, and with everything being abilities, yes, maybe it's easier for there's more abilities happening, so there's more opportunities for your opponent to try to switch something through that they want to do. But it also is like on the flip side, hey, if you want to just block spell casting from a 3-cast wizard, you failed your first 3 up. Instead of them needing to cast all 3 of their spells, you're now rolling for each ability use. So
pros and cons, right? Like, yeah, that's interesting. That's actually really interesting. I like that. That's a good call out with Be'lakor and the Dark Master. I'm hoping that there's a bunch of cheap Be'lakors hit the market where everyone bought him as an ally, and now you can't ally him. So I'm waiting for that cheap Be'lakor to hit the market. So hit me up when you're ready to flog him out. Maybe one more unique hero I'll ask you about, and then I want to hear your any other favorite units that stand out. Obviously, we talked Varangard, we've talked Knights, we talked Chosen, Eternus, and I'm previewing a list that you're going to have in there. Eternus, the Blade of the First Prince. Is Eternus finally useful?
I think he's good. I wouldn't say great like Be'lakor or Abraxia or some of the other units or heroes you want to take, but he has some good reasons to take him, especially if you're taking Be'lakor. So as before, he has an ability. I think he had this before, or a version of this, where he has the potential to come back to life if he dies. Which, in its own right, as we talked about, recursion of units is a really strong mechanic. So getting to bring back a hero that is 6 attacks at 3 damage on the charge is very solid. All these heroes we've talked about can benefit from the Eye of the Gods, right? So getting extra rend or extra hit on stuff like this is really good. But so he's a good little kind of combat hero on his own right. He has the ability to come back on a 7-up with 2d6 on a 7+ if you have Be'lakor, which is going to happen. You're going to hit that roll 60% of the time, so a little less than 2/3. But he's a piece then you don't mind trading early, which is very valuable, because you might be able to likely be able to get him back, if not the next turn, but odds are by the turn afterwards.
Yeah, a nice little target, for example, to seize the center, right? If I have to go first,
Exactly.
Might be one of the two to go in the middle, seize the center. If I happen to lose it, no probs, bring it back, as you said, and I can be a bit more aggressive with Eternus. Again, like it's an okay war scroll, like a 3-up save, 9 health, like again, not super auto include.
Not insane, but solid, right? It's 9 wounds out of 3-up save is without the mortal wound output there was before. He's you're not going to take him down quickly with spells. A 3-up save, you're not going to take him down quickly with shooting because he's again a 3-up save. The shooting has been tempered a lot, and there's not mortal wound shooting or very little mortal wound shooting in the game. So he's like you have to invest a little bit more than you probably want to, especially when he might be coming back. So you can use him to kind of just like we've talked about with the other spells, just get in your opponent's face, be annoying with him, make them deal with him instead of your other stuff, and then he's potentially coming back as well. And then he also on top of all those reasons, which I think are enough reasons to potentially include him or be worth considering. He then has a anti-command ability reaction, which so it's and I don't think there's unless I forgot. No, I don't think there's any limit on how many times you can use this throughout a turn or battle round or anything.
Opponent declares a command for the unit within 12 inches of this unit. So roll a dice, add 1 if you are in combat with enemy units with legionaries or furies. On a 5-up, the command has no effect, but it does count as it's being spent. So it's just every time you declare a command, right, within 12.
Yeah. So how if your opponent wants to countercharge you, are they going to think twice if on a 5-up they're losing those commands and those command abilities? Like, stuff redeploying, stuff, using all attack, all defense. Just the potential ability to turn that off is super impactful. We saw with KO, in 3rd edition, they had a sub-faction that was quite popular that people took just for that effect. Having it on a hero like this is just an extra added bonus, in his favor.
It can stop an opponent from scoring a battle tactic.
Yep.
Like you got to hit that charge to get those 2 units to fight in combat. I failed. Maybe I've already used the re-roll the charge already once, and now I've failed this. That could literally be the difference maker. So,
yeah, and like he's also a good little bit of bait. One of the popular battle tactics is to kill a unit in the enemy territory, kill the entourage, I think it's called. And if you have Bellator and Eternus, Bellator is going to be, he's a War Master, he's going to be your general. Eternus can go in his formation. Well, if someone's trying to kill Eternus as that tactic, well, if they redeploy it, like you said, and then stopping them from, rerolling a charge, that can be so big. So we all know how impactful command points are, and that's what maybe one of the biggest parts of playing 4th edition. So being able to slow that down, even outside the Furies and Chaos Legionnaires, which you're probably not taking, or you could, but that's a bit harder to engineer all those things happening, like having the enemy unit has to be within 3, so it's like, okay, they're then only, what are they doing? All in attack, all in defense is the only thing you're getting to stop on a 4-up. Cool, not bad, but it's mostly the stopping other commands on a 5-up.
Any other favorite units that I've dictated the units we've talked about? Any units that you'd want to call out worth considering? And we're going to go into lists in a moment, folks. But things that maybe have stood out to you, things that you're thinking about now, maybe you haven't tested them just yet, or I've got a couple that I want to talk about, but I want to hear what you are liking.
I think from a hero standpoint, two I take is just the humble Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot. He doesn't have a War Scroll spell anymore or anything, but he does have Oracular Visions, which he had before, but it's now a 5-up ward save. It's not an automatic thing. It's on a 3-up, but a 5-up ward save can be so impactful on anything. Vanguard getting a 5-up ward save, Chosen getting a 5-up ward save, Chaos Knight, Nodal Knights getting a 5-up ward save. All those things can be super impactful, and so good value there. And then I think the God Summoner is also a good shout. Just being a 2-cast wizard that's on foot and barring final points and all that is relatively inexpensive, for 2 casts. So with wanting a good number of spellcasts in the list, if you have the points for him and you're only taking 1 wizard, okay, for a couple more points, he's probably worth taking for being 2 casts. So benefits to all those things. He has the ability to also do the deep strike or put units in reserve. Less relevant with him, but it's potentially cute.
I was actually just rereading that rule, and the thought that came into my mind is, what if I use the Gaunt Summoner to put something in the Silver Towers, then use the launch in the Soul Seeker to then teleport the Gaunt Summoner, then bring it out in the movement phase to come onto the battlefield from the Silver Towers. I mean, you're still a 9-inch charge, but there's some serious movement shenanigans there.
Well, you can do it on a 7-inch charge if you get a spell off for the Gaunt Summoner on foot, which is like, yes, that's all those things, like potentially is a great delivery mechanism, but that's relying on 2 spell casts as opposed to just casting Demonic Speed could potentially be doing the same thing, right? Effectively.
Or using Soul Screen Bridge. Or just using Soul Screen Bridge to teleport in general. Any other units? Like, not heroes. Let's talk units. And I've got one that I've got on my War Scroll card right here. Hopefully you didn't see it. This one's like I want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a couple of quick notes. Vanguard, they kind of consolidated the profiles. So they're rend 2 damage, and they go to 3 damage on the charge. So there's not the trade-off there was before of all the different weapons. They're just kind of universally good, whether they're on the charge or not. With crit mortals is just devastating. I had a unit of 6 of these guys, and they were just insane. We talked about the buffs to Chaos Knights. Chaos Warriors also went to 3s and 3s to hit, and they get +1 rend or rend 1 situationally. Chosen are very similar to. Also, they are rend 1, so they get +1 attack. That's what it is. The +1 attack situationally, and so they're better in combat than they were. So I think those are a lot of the core units, and Chosen are still very similar to what they were before. But those are, I'd love to hear what you're thinking about, Coach.
The thing that really stands out for me right now, and I'm so happy potentially to see them on the table, is the Theridans. I think when you look at the Ogoroid Myrmidon, who will allow the Theridan unit to fight back to back. And if you look at the Theridan, right, it's 4 attacks each, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, rend 1 for 2 damage. It's anti-infantry, and there's a lot of infantry in the game, so that'll be then making it to rend 2. Add 1 to the damage characteristic once per battle for the melee weapon. I can see blocks of 6s running around with these bad boys, which is horrifying. Again, points aside, I can see Theridans hitting the table again. And I know they were starting to come out a little bit, but I think they are actually now a legitimate addition to list now.
Yep. Another good one that's worth shouting is Chaos Furies. They were always kind of annoying units before, but they still have that same kind of ability to like retreat out of combat. But now with the sequencing of when you use combat phase abilities, it doesn't, like before you could take them down because you would be on the charge, you would get to activate first, you would kill them before they had a chance to move away. But now the combat ability happens before anyone activates anything. So it's now random. It's on a 3-up, but a 3-up's still pretty good. That your enemy is potentially just not getting to hit them. So that's another way to deny battle tactics if someone's trying to kill them for kill the entourage, or needs to take a point, or is you're stealing a point by moving them 12 inches just for rolling a 3-up. Like those are going to be really annoying units.
Yeah, absolutely. One other unit I'm going to give a shout out to is our little kitty cat. Once per turn, any combat phase, pick an enemy unit within 6 inches to be the target, roll a dice. If the roll exceeds the unit's control characteristic, it has strike last. So there's another way to get strike last, and there's a lot of control score 1 and 2s. Yep. So that's a very easy way to be making a strike last.
And it has 6 attacks at 2 damage is solid. It's a monster. It's 5 control score itself, 10 health. Like again, just like kind of a annoying unit that can really hamper your opponent if they don't deal with it, or they're dedicating resources to dealing with it.
Yeah, I think the great thing is like I've been going through Stormcast, really deep. There's so much synergy. There's so many units. There's a lot of these nuggets, and I'm sure everyone here is going to talk to us about their favorite thing. And you can double down and build into your Darkoath, and build out some really interesting synergies. There's so much in this book. I can't wait to see people where they land and what points allow us to do. Which kind of leads us to, I guess, some of your lists and some of your early thinking. So what we've got here is Jordan's given us 2 match play legal lists. We can't talk about points at this time of recording, but and they may change before they get released. So these 2 lists are match play legal. Just know that. At least at the time of recording. So your Godswrath Warband, you've taken the Law of Damned and the Manifestation, so you've kept it in-house, although we have talked a little bit about potentially looking at the universal manifestations. You're a 2-drop. So Regiment 1 is Be'lakor. Something special with Be'lakor, and you'll notice this with some heroes, don't actually, Coach, because some heroes do allow you to have another hero in the regiment. It's uncommon, but it is around. Morathi, for example, is one of them. Be'lakor is another one where Be'lakor allows you to add Eternus into the regiment. So you'll see Be'lakor, Eternus, a unit of 5 chosen, 5 knights. You've gone chosen with Nurgle, knights with Khorne. You then have Regiment 2, which has got your Chaos Sorcerer Lord, Radiance of Dark Glory, Infernal Puppet Artifact, 2 units of 5 Chaos Furies. What's this list do? How's it work? What's the thinking behind this particular list?
Yeah, a lot of these units and stuff we've talked about, I think the marks on like the Chaos Chosen and Knights are interchangeable, but this is kind of what I would say I've felt through the learnings in early games of 4th edition. This is kind of where I find I've kind of gravitated towards in my list, is having, okay, I like to have 3 casts in my list. You want to, you still are having, or there's advantage to having a big, reinforced combat hammer, and then you want some other units that can be independent operators, like on the Chaos Knights, that can, go store objectives or battle tactics, but also can threaten objectives on their own if they're, not super reinforced or whatnot, and just kind of a little bit of everything. So we have that stuff, as well as Chaos Sorcerer Lord talked about, his great buff. And with the Chaos Furies, like I said, great units, also good to store battle tactics with, can be super annoying. This list in general, like, will have a lot of opportunity. It's not speed. I mentioned, a situation earlier in the video where you potentially have Be'lakor and Chosen next to each other, and how do you go anywhere near an objective that they're near when they're potentially countercharging and still getting strikes first if they're within 3 of Be'lakor? Like, that's extremely scary. And very tough to annoy. Eternus potentially in the mix as well for all the reasons we talked about before. I feel like we've talked about all these units, and you can see why this, like, a lot of the things I was excited about and I thought there were value in, kind of coming together in one list. And yeah,
that Regiment 1 is really scary when you think about this mobile castle where you've got the potential of having, Be'lakor, the Knights, the 3d6 charge Chosen, Eternus. You've then got the mobility with the Furies, either being able to do surround and destroy. Not surround and destroy. There's one where it's like having two units on the short edges of the battlefield. Like, you've got battle tactic scoring abilities and a lot of flexibility here, which I really like. And no Varangard, despite everyone talking about how amazing Varangard is. You've restrained a little, although you do have Chosen.
Yeah, and I think it's partially because just when you take a bigger hero like Be'lakor, points are limited. Now you could look at taking Eternus out and upgrading your Chosen or something to Varangard. But there's pros and cons to each, and sometimes it's just really nice to have those little individual models or units that can go out and do their own thing, and be able to kind of spread your power out. The speed on the Chaos Knights is great. I think this list is not only good at storing tactics, like, again, the 2 units on the short edges of the battlefield. It's good at that one, but also if you do that with Furies, you're potentially putting units there that you don't mind losing. But in a situation where you can also do it with Chaos Knights, where it's like, okay, then your opponent's kind of denied that tactic because it's kind of hard to get, the Chaos Knights are in the way, and the Chaos Knights are tough to remove. It had 20 wounds on a 3-up, or 20 wounds on a 3-up save. Potentially here again, Core or Nurgle, you're interchangeable on those marks, I think, with all the Chaos stuff. So it can be tough to deal with that one. You are a magical intervention away from having a charge with a 12-inch charge on average with the Chaos Chosen if you get demonic speed off on the opponent turn, and that can stop a turn 1 seize the center. Like, not let alone with Be'lakor, the Dark Master can stop battle tactics. Chaos Furies, we talked about their potential to pull out of combat. There's an argument, honestly, for putting the Chaos Furies in the regiment and switching them for the Knights. To go
from Regiment 2 to Regiment 1.
Yes. because the Furies might be more enticing for your opponent to like try and go forward combat for that battle tactic, but it's a 3-up away from denying it. So, it's like maybe an easier thing to kill, but there's always trade-offs, right? And that's something you'd figure out with experience which you like better.
Yeah, I think I'm probably more of a Regiment 2 kind of guy. Just to, I put the what's it called, the prosecutors in one of my generals lists, and they die really easy. So I'm like, yeah, maybe let's not do that again.
Yeah,
I like it. I dig it. It's definitely not a list that I would have thought of, mostly because I'm probably more of a Abraxia Archaon kind of guy over a Be'lakor. I mean, Bellacor's great, but, seeing Alternus, play around with this how you will.
no, this was my second list. I similarly had to start with Abraxia.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And you know what? There's an argument that you could combine the Chaos Knights into a unit of 10. And
sure.
a unit of 10 having 40 wounds on a 3-up save, mark that Nurgle, and you will grind your opponent. Like, you'll pin them down and either force a retreat or they're not getting out of that combat. It's super tough.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of them.
Yeah. Worth noting, so one thing about that list and why I did mark it the way I did is kind of with the Chosen, they're playing that role where the Chosen are better off the charge than the Knights are. The Knights get lots of buffs on the charge where the Chaos Chosen don't necessarily care. And then you can, in a situation where it's like, okay, you want to make sure you're getting the charges off with the Knights so they get their buffs off, and they can do a devastating amount of damage. That's when, okay, maybe then you're screening with the Chaos Furies and Eternus even, as well as the Chosen. So there's, I think still lots of opportunities to get them into places. And you're also potentially, the Chaos Knights are something you don't mind demonic speeding, throwing up turn 1, like an Eternus to go take an objective and get you hold more. And 20 wounds on a 3-up save is a lot for your opponent to take off, especially if you can get the 5-up ward from the Chaos Sorcerer Lord.
And that's probably why I think of Knights as defensive pieces more than offensive pieces. Now, there's an argument that, they can play the Mighty Ducks flying V with Varangard and support offensively, but that mobile hammer, pinning them from the flank, is also a really viable. I guess it depends on your play style, like what you prefer and how you want to build around it. So no right or wrong answer, whatever works for you. The other list, and I'm excited to talk about this one, is a Darkoath Horde. You've got yourself the same, spell lore and manifestation lore. You've gone 3 drops over 2 drops. So Regiment 1, you've got the Darkoath War Queen with the Deathmonger and the Conqueror's Crown. You've got your unit of 10 Darkoath Marauders, 2 units of 5 Fell Riders with the Javelins. You've got Regiment 2, which is Abraxia, 3 units of 3 Varangard, all marked Khorne, and then a Gaunt Summoner. So this is like all gas, no brakes.
Yeah, it's well, yes, and that's where Abraxia, like, the first time I ran her, I actually kind of ran a hybrid of these 2 lists. I had her 6 Varangard and then the 2 units of 5 Knights, and that actually felt really good. But these are kind of 2 evolutions of that list, and wanting to include Be'lakor. So I think you could do a little bit less with the Varangard, but having 3 units of 3 gives you lots of opportunity to get places. With the fights twice, 3-packs are often nice because you don't have to overuse it necessarily with the 6-pack in a situation. But sometimes it can also be nice to hit with a 6-pack first if there's a big target you want to hit cripple. So trade-offs to that. You could easily mark the Vanguard Nurgle like we've talked about for the reasons we've talked about. But this is a place where it's like, okay, maybe you're trading your Vanguard a little bit more. You're setting 1 unit up to deal with something, it's getting hit back, and then the other 2 units, rather than it being a 6-pack that gets stuck in, these next 3-packs then are following up, getting the buffs on the charge, doing more damage because of being marked Khorne. And obviously the slight synergies we've talked about with Abraxia give you 4 pretty quick pieces that can all go around and kill stuff pretty well. So that's obviously the offensive stuff. The God Summoners in here, just to give you 2 casts, as I talked about before. You could save some points by taking a Chaos Sorcerer Lord, which there's benefit to for the ward save, like we've talked about, or but he just goes down to 1 cast. I like less than 2 feels army dependent. For me feels very tight. But then wanted to do look at another subfaction and the new Darkoath models that are incredible sculpts and everybody loves, and I've really enjoyed painting up. Getting some of those on the table is awesome, and to kind of balance out not having all the points we put into those 4 units in Regiment 2, we not only have the War Queen, but we have and 3 chaff units that can the Fell Riders can go out to store those battle tactics off to the sides. Marauders can screen. Fell Riders obviously, of course, can do that as well. So while we put a lot of points in our offense, the sub-faction allows us to still bring back those 3 scoring units throughout the game to help with battle tactics, to help with objective scoring, to harass with like the javelins of the Fell Riders, which what is it, D3 damage, 5 attacks?
Yeah, the javelins.
Yeah.
I
think it's
so in shooting, it's 1 attack each, so obviously 5. Yeah. Hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, no rend for D3 damage.
Exactly.
Doesn't have shooting combat though, so once you're stuck, you're stuck.
Yeah, they're going to go down quick in combat if someone puts anything into them. But again, you're just harassing with them. You're throwing battle tactics. You're grabbing points. They're quick. They're annoying. You can screen with them, and that's shooting. Like you get 2 of those through, and you're potentially doing 4 or 5 wounds. That's like everything cares about taking 5 wounds, and that's just from like a little chip shooting in Slaves to Darkness, which isn't ever something they had before. So it's not something that's again super reliable, but some extra chip shooting just could be really annoying. Or they can harass little heroes and stuff like that.
Well, I built my Darkoath Fell Riders with javelins, and another benefit to that is, even though it's rend nothing, the D3 damage potential may force your opponent to use all-out defense. So that's 1 of their 4 CP, unless they're getting like the underdog mechanic that you wouldn't normally do with 5 attacks with no rend. You're like, I can wear this. Mm-hmm. But with the D3 potential, it's a hero sniper. It could do some serious damage. So I like it. I do like them a lot.
And then, you store your tactic with them. You harass a couple, chaff units or heroes, and then they get taken down, and then you bring back 3 of the 5 the next turn, and they're doing the same thing. They're all that stuff, and also they have -1 hit in shooting from a passive ability. So if your opponent doesn't want to chase them down in combat, they're actually you have to invest a little more than you would want to in shooting because of that.
Shout out to the Darkoath War Queen, because I think like when you look at this at first, you're like, oh, there's clearly a big weakness, and that is the Darkoath War Queen. You remove the Darkoath War Queen from play, you lose your battle trait, your battle formation abilities. She has a 5-up ward.
Yes.
Like you wouldn't think a little 5-wound idiot has a 5-up ward, but here she is. She's a tanky little thing, and then on a 3-up, she creates on an objective a 5-up ward for other Darkoaths. So if someone's going to charge you, you could screen an objective, chuck those Darkoath Fell Riders around, or the Marauders, and create a really tanky objective controlling group.
Yep. Again, just making your opponent put in more than they want to into something, right?
And they're not very expensive as well. Like it's actually not a expensive package to be putting on the table.
Yeah. And again, with the recursion, like here, you're not trying to get, keep her close to your Darkoath Marauders to get the mortal wounds out of them when they die. You don't care about that. You keep her safe in the back of your lines just to be able to roll that ability, be on objectives, like that kind of thing. But she does have our trait here of Deathmonger, where she can pop off in combat. Conqueror's Crown also, potentially noteworthy. Sometimes late game you just need something to make a big play, and with Deathmonger, you're getting her 10 attacks out of her at 2 damage with crit mortals. Like you roll 3 6s, get 6 mortal wounds. not. But
Yeah, she's crit mortals. Yeah, she's crit mortals. Yeah, right.
So
I like it. I like it. I look forward to more Darkoath hitting the table. I can't wait to see, the Wielder Fiend, and there's so many cool things you can do with this book. And I hope that when the Battle Tome comes out, they expand the Darkoath range even further. It's something that it doesn't quite have the hammer unit yet. It's obviously great for bodies and chaff and speed, but it doesn't have not that it has a Varangard, but it doesn't have that hammer yet that is going to do damage within Darkoath itself.
Yeah, I think the Savagers are maybe like they do more damage than the Marauders. They have the crit mortals, so from that standpoint, that can help, and they get a 5 aboard as well situationally, so they can be all right, but and for not much more cost than the Marauders. But again, do you really want to invest it?
Do you want to have a horde? It's so because there are people out there who want to build around Darkoath, like that's their goal. They just want a full Darkoath army, and it's cool. But you're running basically like zombies. It's just flooding the board with cheap bodies, and that's how you're playing currently.
Yep.
It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. Any other final thoughts about your list before we kind of wrap up? I do have some questions for you, and we'll bring it home. But anything else about lists or flexibilities, or actually, have you noticed much difference with your 3-drop versus your 2-drop? Maybe that's a worth commenting.
Not like. Does it make a big difference either way? Well, not really. Like, sure, you're gonna win the chance to choose attack or defense, or choose who goes first more often if you're 2-drop. I think 3 is definitely an acceptable place to be. I think 2 to 4 is probably going to be the average of what we see, with maybe even 3 to 4, because 2 can be very tight for some armies. So it's fine. You just gotta, I think, have plans for whether you're expecting to be going first or second based on who has choice, and that's where something like in both of these lists, something featured is 2 fast units or multiple fast units that can run up the board and store some easy battle tactics, because sometimes those the missions with territories up to the half of the board can be really tough to store on turn 1, turn 2. So having options for those are really good. And again, both of these lists have units that can do it with cheap throwaway units like the Fell Riders or the Furies, as well as heavier units that can do it if your opponent tries to zone you off from doing that, or does it themselves on the turn before you with something like the Vanguard or the Knights, who can both go hit and remove things that are in the way, or can go into combat to get across outside your territory.
It's a really good call out, because like I've run a bunch of like 4-drop lists, and I'm often given first. So how do I score that first battle tactic? It's often seize the center. That's usually my first play, because I'm trying not to take their land too early. That's a late game play. So seize the center is perfect. I don't want to be putting, my Fulminators, my Varangard, my super tanky good unit that I want to charge with. So having something cheap like Fell Riders, Furies, perfect things for seize the center, and they can act as screens and obviously apply whatever to your army. Got some questions. Man, so many questions from Discord, and I don't know if it's because you, Jordan, you're incredible. People love you. Again, Season of War, go check them out. I'm sure you already are. So go through some questions. All right, so we've gone through a lot of these questions so far, which is nice. But maybe one thing we haven't quite talked about yet is the monsters. And I'm going to broaden the scope here. We Soul Grinders, or our friends, our Manticore friends. We haven't talked any Manticore friends. And some of the poor folk listening to this have gone out and bought the Cities of Sigmar Talia model to replace the Manticore, hoping that the Sorcerer Lord or a Manticore Lord is actually half decent. Will we see competitive lists tapping into the Manticore equivalents yet?
It's tough to say. If depending on what else you're taking in your list, if you have the points to upgrade it, those points may be more worthwhile than something else. The Sorcerer Lord on Manticore again has oracular visions, so that's a great ability. And it makes him kind of a more mobile unit, so he can follow some of your other units. Like as your other stuff is running up the board, it's easier for him to keep in range. You also don't mind getting him a little closer to the action because he's got more health. So like there's definitely an argument he can give is another combat engagement strikes last source situationally against monsters. But just another piece that can kind of play that game. You're not taking him necessarily for his damage because 6 attacks hitting out 4s isn't the most reliable, but it's obviously it gives him some damage, right? He can deal with chaff stuff where a deep striking unit of whatever clan rats popping out of a gnawhole, he can deal with them or not fear going into them, right? As opposed to a Chaos Sorcerer Lord who has to run away. So there's a lot of value to him. It's just going to be the trade-off where when we get points wherever they fall and what you're giving up to make that upgrade, and it's worth it. So but body war scroll wise, I think the Manticore Chaos Sorcerer Lord on Manticore is very solid. Chaos Lord, similar thing. Yeah, I'd say it's probably not worth the upgrade, or less value upgrading him versus like the Demonic Steed or the Cartridge Rack. Yeah, but
yeah,
I think maybe the reason, because there are those two mid-tier options, in terms of points values from the Manticore to the Chaos Lord, we have two options in the middle, which we don't have with the Sorcerer Lord, which is why maybe that trade-off is a little easier.
And the challenge as well is that it's competing with this fast mobile monster hero, and you're blessed with them. You've got so many options. Again, Abraxia, Archaon, Be'lakor, these two here. You can there's so many options in that little space. I do like the wizard version. Would I add it into my list? I don't know. I think I'd like to add it, but I feel like it would get dropped pretty quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah, but there's again, I almost feel like I convinced myself they were talking about the extra resiliency and whatnot, and if he is your general or something, that's very valuable. But yeah, the Chaos Lord for being higher points because of the Manticore, it's hard to invest that many points, as building on what you were saying, in this army because of the other options and the fact that he doesn't have casts. So the Sorcerer Lord, it's okay, he's still one cast, but if you're going to take a big monster hero, I mean, even Abraxia, it's like, oh, she's not a wizard though. Whereas like Bellator's a wizard, Archaon's a wizard, the Sorcerer Lord on Manticore is a wizard. Like, there's a lot of value that wizards bring because of the free manifestations.
I think the challenge as well with slaves is that all 3 of your spells are 12 inches. Mm-hmm. So if you have your Chaos Sorcerer, so if you have your Sorcerer Lord sitting at the Nexus, you're quickly out of range for casting, right? So you're running up this little itty up the board. Your Chaos Sorcerer Lord on Manticore can follow the board, summoning manifestations, using these spells here. You've obviously got Binding Damnation for the strike last spell. Then they also have a Monstrous Rampage or a Rampage now that strikes last. So the Sorcerer Lord on Manticore, I think, does have some utility, but you can't run Be'lakor and the Sorcerer Lord. I feel like you're too many points in heroes. Exactly. So what have you found from battle tactic wise? Maybe instead of going deep into slaves, I'm seeing a lot of questions. I'm seeing a lot of really good questions about units. And I'm sure by the time this video is out, you've got the PDF in front of you. But what have you found in regards to, let's say, the command points? Like, for example, one of the questions I've got here is around the Gorebeast Chariot interacting with Power Through. Now, I really like Power Through because, something like the Chariot has 8 wounds. It can go through a unit, do some damage and reposition. And would I spend a command point, though, on a Chariot to do Power Through? Maybe if it was at the bottom of the turn, but it's not a viable strategy, potentially. What have you found command point wise?
I think the biggest one that slaves love is counter charge, because slaves want to be in combat. They want to be on the charge often. Again, things like the knights, like if you get close to knights and they counter charge you, good luck, right? They're going to take something off. So they really love that. Power through situationally can be, very solid. but it's honestly, I feel like I've probably only used it once in my game so far.
Power through.
Yeah.
I've only really used it with Suns, to be honest. Like in my
Yeah.
even like other armies, like actually no, I have used it with Marathi as well, but like it is situational.
Yeah, it's great when you do want to use it, but I'd say the counter charge is the biggest one. Slaves just love combat and want to be stuck in, like some other armies, so that's one that they definitely take advantage of a lot.
I was just rereading the Chaos War Shrine because we haven't talked about the War Shrine at all, and
Mhm.
obviously being a priest, our only access to prayers. I think I don't think you have any other priests.
Yep.
You haven't got a prayer law, unfortunately, but the War Shrine has some interesting rules, and that obviously interacts with magical intervention as well. Chanting value of 4 gives some interesting things.
Yeah, the biggest one is a 3d6 charge, but then it has to be March Slanesh, and the target has to be March Slanesh. And the fact that it's like the prayers are still unreliable. It's not an ability, which, this is the same problem it had last edition, but it was a 3, I think, before. Well, now it's a 4. It's like, okay, you're probably not doing that turn 1, so are you going to mark something Slanesh and mark this Slanesh for the chance of a 3d6 charge, which is most relevant earlier in the game? Not universally, but that's where it's like, okay, it's just, yeah.
And you can't do the trick anymore, which was what I used to do, which was I would grab grab Sigvold as your ally. Then, obviously, based on the charge roll, he'd get a sexy little spike in his combat. But unfortunately, allies are out of the picture, so no Sigvold for us.
Yep. It does have a passive 6-up ward for chaos stuff, which is solid, but yeah, the 6-up ward isn't, I think, enough reason to take it alone. So situationally, I think it's one that kind of you'll need to get some more reps on to get a feel for and justify. Because in my experience with the players, even if you like turn 1, bank the points, and set up for when you really want to use the ability in turn 2, or you use you're investing command points to use magical intervention to get build up points on the opponent's turn. All you need to do is roll a 1 on the next turn, and even if you had 3, you're still failing it, or you had 6 and you're still failing it. Actually, we've had a battle report that's come out already. I think it was a members one where I was playing cities and I had the Pontifex Sinestra, who was a 2-prayer priest. I started the turn with six points on her. I rolled a 1 on my first one, lost 3. I'm like, okay, I can still do second prayer because it doesn't matter that she failed the first one. I rolled another 1, lost another 3. So it's just the fickleness of the gods and prayers, and you're going to run into that once in a while with the War Shrine as well, or prayers in that. So, but it's like magic, right?
Yeah, at least you don't take damage, unlike a miscast, which is nice. 2 final questions. One is for our Slaves to Darkness friends. This comes from Manfred. What's one non-obvious thing new players should consider when starting a Slaves to Darkness army?
Oh, non-obvious. I think there is more depth to playing Slaves to Darkness than is expected. They are often thought of as like kind of a one-dimensional army, which, don't get me wrong, they love combat and that's what they want to be doing. But especially now, there is a lot of tricks and tech. You look at that first list we talked about with Be'lakor. He's got obviously a lot of tech with the Dark Master. Eternus can be really annoying to deal with and a troublesome piece in the army. You got stuff like the Furies that are messing with people's days. All those things combined can be a hard army to play against in some ways as well. So I think that's one thing where it's one of those armies like Ironjawz maybe in AoS 3 where it's like on the surface level you charge and you fight, and that's where you start. It's a great army to learn with because of that. But then there is a lot of depth to positioning and all the micro decisions that you're making throughout the game that I think makes it more interesting to play Slaves than maybe some other combat armies.
the depth of slaves, I think, is a blessing and a curse, like Stormcast. It's like analysis paralysis. The amount of lists I've built with Stormcast, and then I go down a route, and then I'm doing this, and then all of a sudden, like, it's overwhelming potentially for a new person because you don't have the roster, you don't have the models. So just stick to something, build it out, get comfortable. Don't just go chasing, because you'll be chasing forever. That's the challenge.
Yep.
Final question, and then I'll kind of wrap things up. This one's come from 42, and it's like almost like the opposite. It's like, for people who are going to face Slaves to Darkness for the first time, what is something that we should watch out for or consider when playing against Slaves to Darkness?
Watch out for countercharge. Obviously, like, again, similar to the last answer, Bellator, Furies, all those pieces that can mess up your plans and stop you from achieving what you want to do. You really have to be very smart about what units you go into when, and make sure you've got the damage or the rend to punch through their armor, because they can be, obviously a handful to deal with if, like, in combat, and you don't. Nothing like getting hit back from Vanguard at rend 2 damage, even if they're getting charged.
Yeah, there's some absolute hard hitters in Slaves to Darkness, and I think it's, for me, it's the speed. Like, I can deploy. Most people deploy on the line. So I deploy on the line, my opponent deploys on the line, and I go, okay, cool. There's going to be about 18 inches between us. I shouldn't have to worry too much of a turn 1 charge. No, there's definitely much more opportunity for a turn 1 charge, especially. So playing it safe, and if there is a genuine concern of yours and you have more drops than your opponent, being conservative and still thinking about how you score that battle tactic, but equally knowing that they can 3d6 charge you, consider that in your deployment, because that'll catch you out. It'll catch you out. Let alone a double strike Varangard who 3d6 charge in your face. Any final thoughts or comments or anything you want to share to the Slaves to Darkness community that you haven't shared yet?
I think for prospective Slaves players, like you mentioned, I think one of the best reasons to get into them is they have one of the most beautiful model ranges ever. Obviously, we saw a refresh, I think, at the start of last year, and then we just got, all the Darkoath stuff, Abraxia. They've got to be probably my favorite army in terms of the model range, over the last while, and that's enough reason to collect any army, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed painting them. So I have gone out and kit bashed my demon prince to look like the old Azazel from Fantasy Battles, this Slaanesh demon prince. I have just been converting my Varangard, so getting things like, again, Slaanesh parts to kit bash the troops, and I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've really enjoyed Slaves. Unfortunately, there's a lot of trim, which drives me mental, but otherwise, it's such a gorgeous range.
Yeah.
If people want to see more of Jordan, again, you should know Seasons of War. Go check them out. Battle reports all the time. You'll see this come out into action. Do we have an upcoming Slaves to the Darkness battle report coming?
At the time of recording for us, I actually just finished editing one today. So the first match, which again features Abraxia. So that might be out just before this video, I think. So definitely go check that out. It should be out by the time you're watching this. You'll get to see, Abraxia, Chaos Knights, Varangard in action, and it was a great game actually on both sides. So
go check it out and leave a comment. Go make a sacrifice to the algorithm gods, and I guarantee you your first Eyes of the Gods roll will be a 6. So go out and support the battle report. And any shout outs, anyone you want to say hello to before we come to an end?
Everyone, I think the biggest one and the people I'm most thankful for in the community are our channel members. So they are, we do the battle reports. A ton of work goes into it. Both myself and Ryan on editing, and everyone that comes to play games. other Island Ridge, like a lot of friends that come out and play all the time. So everyone that kind of allows us to do what we do on our channel. Again, members being the backbone of that, really shout out to everyone that supports the channel in any way, shape, or form.
There's actually an interesting discussion last night while I was trying to fall asleep in my Discord about community and about the, just the general amount of content coming out from Age of Sigmar. And I think the message I would have to everybody here is support the creators you most enjoy, whether it's me, whether it's Jordan, whether it's whoever it is, however you can support. If you want to see more AoS content, you need to help us help you. So support where you possibly can, whether it's through merch or affiliate links or channel memberships. They go a long way, and it allows us to be able to step away from full-time work into part-time work, into eventually full-time YouTube. So whoever that is, I'm not begging for your money. I'm just saying, if you want to see more AoS content, support whoever you most enjoy in order to allow them to create more content.
Yeah, especially in AoS. 40K is our big community, but for the those of us like ourselves that are focused purely on AoS, it's maybe a tougher time. So definitely, I'm sure we all appreciate the support we get.
Support however you can. Jordan, you've been an absolute gem. Thank you for coming back on the channel. I look forward to checking out that battle report. I hope it's not too good, because I've only just settled on Stormcast for an upcoming August event, even though I was going to run Slaves. I worry that I'm going to go back to Slaves and I'll be doing a month's worth of painting in a week just to get them up to speed. I'm genuinely concerned, because I've loved Abraxia. I've loved the Varangard. I've loved the Knights. My Demon Prince is looking hot. I'm already getting excited. All right, let's wrap up. I'm going to go before I make a commitment. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you press a like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the description. I also want to